Let's talk about COVID-19 numbers, more specifically COVID-19 deaths. Over 6,700 new cases have been reported in the last 24 hours, but it's the high death rate that is becoming a concern. So according to experts, excess deaths in the country are running at 2,000 per week. Now, let's try and find out what is happening and help me try and understand what is going on. Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation at the Northwest University, Professor Jeffrey Mphahlele. Prof, good morning to you. I appreciate your time in joining me this morning. The reason I wanted to talk to you is my understanding was that the number of deaths would come down because our hospitalization is better, and also Omicron wasn't as severe a strain as Delta, but yet we're seeing still very high numbers of deaths. Good morning. Why is that, do you think?
No, thank you, Gareth, for having me. So we are all familiar with the concept of cause and effect. So if you use that concept, clearly there is always a lag period between the cases, the admissions, and also the deaths, the number of deaths. So in this case, obviously, we're talking about it's in hospitals and the number of deaths. So even if Omicron largely is mild, it doesn't mean there will not be people dying. But the people or the number of deaths that we are seeing now is actually due to the cases that occurred earlier on, 4 to 6 weeks earlier. Because we started seeing the number of cases peaking around the end of November, beginning of December, due to Omicron. So I just want to say that what we are seeing now is basically, the lag as a result of, the lag period between the admissions and obviously now we see a number of deaths.
Okay, so it's a lag period, you're saying, between the reporting, and I suppose that is always the issue. The numbers we get could have be backdated as well. They're catching up essentially on numbers from a few days ago.
No,
but even with that having been said, Prof, it's a lag period, yes.
It's the lag period between cases,
yes,
and the number of deaths. So in other words, people get admitted and then they will not die immediately. They will die 2 weeks to 4 weeks later.
Does the number of deaths still concern you, though? Is it high? Like, let's take away the lag for the moment as well, and we look at the number of deaths from yesterday, 181, yes, that's in one report, but as you say, that could have been deaths from, people falling sick a few weeks ago. Are we seeing higher than normal deaths, Prof, according to what you're seeing?
Well, if you look at excess deaths from the South African Medical Research Council, clearly what we have seen with the Omicron wave is nothing compared to the previous 3 waves. So the total number of deaths remain very low overall. So it is concerning because even, one person dying is concerning. But clearly, if you look at the number of statistics, is nothing comparable, especially to the second wave that occurred more or less the same time last year. I like to believe that the number of deaths have peaked somewhere in the last 2 weeks of December. We should see these cases going down if you look at the 7-day or a weekly average. And then it might be that because of the festive season, because we're just coming from the festive season, we might see slight number of cases going up. But this should not necessarily, change the number of deaths significantly. So things can go either way because of the effect of the festive season, but it will not change the picture that you see dramatically.
Let me leave this as my last question to you, Prof, if you don't mind. I know that viewers will kill me if I don't ask the obvious question about these deaths. Are we now at the point where vaccinations are, that we can start seeing numbers? I'm not sure if you have the actual stats. It's fine if you don't. But are you seeing generally people who are dying who have not been vaccinated? Or are we still seeing a high number of people who have been vaccinated but are dying of COVID-19? Last question to you.
Yeah, sure. Those who are vaccinated, they are less likely to die. There's no question about that. And then the stats can also, back that up. There are a number of studies that have shown that we are seeing a number of people dying who are, over 60 years plus or over 50 years plus. So the elderly is still at risk. But the good thing is that if you look at the vaccination coverage, we seem to be making progress there because at least 60% of over 50s or of over 60s have been vaccinated. So this is good news, but we need to see this coverage going up and up. So I think overall, obviously, if you are not vaccinated, you stand a higher risk of dying from COVID-19.
All right. Well, I know that's a difficult stat to break down for us as it moves so quickly, but Professor, I thank you for your time in joining us this morning. Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation at the Northwest University, Professor Mphahlele, joining us here on the South African Morning.